I learned early on that invisibility was a survival tactic. In a place like Westridge Academy, a Gothic fortress tucked away in the rainy evergreen heart of Washington State, standing out was dangerous, especially for an Omega. So I kept my head down. I wore thick, oversized sweaters, slapped on medical-grade scent patches to suffocate my natural vanilla scent, and navigated the echoing halls like a ghost. It worked perfectly, until it did not. My sanctuary was the library, specifically a massive scarred oak table shoved into the darkest, dustiest corner of the third-floor archives. Nobody came up here. It was the perfect place to sleep off the exhaustion of AP classes, and more importantly, to run the listener. The listener was my secret, an anonymous advice blog I set up for Westridge students to dump their trauma drama and high school secrets. I was the faceless voice in the dark, giving advice I probably was not qualified to give. It made me feel useful, seen, but safely hidden. Then came a rainy Tuesday afternoon in late October. I was half asleep against my backpack, my laptop open to a blank email, listening to the steady drumming of rain against the stained glass window. Then the air changed. Before I heard him, I smelled him. The heavy, suffocating scent of cedarwood, masking a sharp electric crackle of ozone, like a thunderstorm about to break. It bypassed my blockers and hit my senses like a physical blow. My Omega instincts flared, a sudden terrifying mix of biological submission and absolute panic. I snapped my head up. Hunter Crawford was standing at the edge of my table. He was the apex predator of Westridge, football captain heir to a massive family fortune, and an alpha whose reputation was built on ruthlessness and a terrifyingly short temper. He was huge, his broad shoulders blocking out the dim library light. His dark hair was damp from the rain falling over eyes that were currently fixed on me with a blood-curdling intensity. He did not say a word. He just pulled out the chair directly across from me. The wood shrieked against the floor. He sat down heavily, crossing his arms over his broad chest, and stared. I froze. My lungs forgot how to expand. I rapidly searched my brain for what I had done wrong. Did I bump into him in the cafeteria? Did he find out about the listener? Was this his table? It had to be his table. I was sitting in the apex predator spot, and now I was going to die in the third-floor archives. Move, my brain screamed, apologize and run, but my body would not obey. Whether it was pure terror or the stupid buried pride of an Omega who was sick of being pushed around, I did not move. I swallowed hard, gripping the edge of my laptop until my knuckles turned white. The silence stretched. 5 minutes, 10. He did not blink. His jaw was clenched so tight a muscle ticked in his cheek. Up close, I noticed something else. He looked exhausted. There were faint, dark circles under his eyes and a tight crease between his brows like he was fighting a skull-splitting headache. The electric scent of ozone rolling off him was not just aggressive, it was chaotic, unstable. I did not know it then, but alphas on the verge of a pre-rut were like walking bombs. And apparently, my faint blocker muffled vanilla scent was the only thing keeping the pin in place. But I did not know that. I just thought he wanted to murder me. For a full hour, we sat in a suffocating silent standoff. The rain hammered on the glass. Hunter breathed in slow, measured counts, his eyes burning into mine. I stared at my screen, my hands shaking too much to type a single word. When the warning bell for the end of the period finally rang, Hunter stood up. He leaned over the table close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his skin. I flinched back, bracing myself against the chair. He stopped. Something flashed in his eyes, a flicker of something that looked almost like regret, before his expression hardened into stone again. He turned and walked away without a single word, leaving me gasping for air in an empty corner. That night, the rain in Washington turned into a downpour. I sat on my bed, wrapped in a blanket, still trying to scrub the memory of Hunter's intense stare from my mind. I opened my laptop and logged into the listener, needing the distraction of other people's problems. There was one new email in the inbox. The sender was listed simply as HC. I clicked it open. Listener. My head feels like it is splitting open. Everything is too loud, too bright, too much. I am losing my mind. Today, I found the only quiet place left in this hellhole of a school, and some stubborn little Omega was sitting in my spot. He looked absolutely terrified of me, like I was a monster. But he would not move. He just sat there smelling like vanilla and defiance, making it impossible for me to think straight. Why are Omegas so damn frustrating? I should have kicked him out, but I could not bring myself to do it. Tell me how to get rid of him without losing the only piece I have had in weeks. HC. I stared at the screen until the glowing letters blurred together. Say, Hunter Crawford. My jaw dropped. The terrifying alpha who had mentally tortured me for an hour was whining to my anonymous blog about how stubborn I was. He thought I was the frustrating one. He was the one who crashed my table. A sudden hot spike of indignation replaced my lingering fear. The audacity of this guy. The absolute nerve. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Dear HC, maybe the stubborn little Omega would not look at you like a monster if you did not act like a territorial jerk. If it is a public library, it is not your spot. It is first come, first served. My advice, stop glaring at people and learn some basic manners, or find a new place to brood. The Listener. I hit send. A savage sense of satisfaction washed over me. Hunter Crawford wanted my table fine. He wanted to try and intimidate me out of the only place in Westridge where I felt safe. I closed my laptop and looked out at the storm raging outside my window. I was not going to run. Tomorrow I was going back to that oak table. Let the alpha bring his worst. We were going to war. War is supposed to be loud. It is supposed to be shouting and crashing and chaos. My war with Hunter Crawford was entirely silent. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday passed in exactly the same way. The bell for fourth period would ring. I would retreat to the third floor archives, claim my oak table, and brace myself. 10 minutes later, the heavy oak doors would swing open. Hunter would walk in smelling like a brewing thunderstorm, pull out the chair across from me, and sit. He did not speak. I did not flinch. It was a standoff of pure stubborn endurance. I spent the hours pretending to read my AP European History textbook, while he spent the hours staring at me with a dark, unreadable intensity. The air between us was always thick, suffocatingly charged with his cedar and ozone scent. But by the second week, the rules of our silent war started to blur. It happened on a Monday. The late autumn sun broke through the Washington clouds for a rare, blinding moment, shining directly through the stained glass window and right into my eyes. I squinted, trying to shield my face with my hand to keep reading. Across from me, Hunter's jaw tightened. Suddenly, he stood up. The chair scraped violently against the floor. My heart leaped into my throat. This is it, I thought. He is finally going to throw me out the window. Instead, he bypassed me entirely. He marched to the window, grabbed the heavy velvet pull cord, and yanked the blinds shut with unnecessary force. The dim, comforting gloom of the library returned. He walked back, sat down heavily, crossed his arms, and resumed his glare. I stared at him, my brain short-circuiting. Did the apex predator of Westridge Academy just do me a favor? Then came Wednesday. He arrived late. The scent of ozone preceded him, but today it was erratic, spiked with a heavy exhaustion that made my omega instincts hum with a strange, involuntary urge to soothe. He dropped his massive backpack on the floor. In one hand, he held his usual black coffee. In the other, a paper cup with a cardboard sleeve. He slid the paper cup across the scarred wood. It stopped exactly inches from my laptop. I looked at the cup. Steam curled from the lid. It smelled like chamomile tea and honey. I looked up at him. He did not meet my eyes. Instead, he folded his massive arms on the table, buried his face into the crook of his elbow, and closed his eyes. Within 2 minutes, his breathing deepened. The aggressive crackle of lightning in his scent smoothed out, leaving only the deep, grounding smell of cedarwood. He was asleep. I sat there frozen, staring at a sleeping alpha and a cup of chamomile tea. I was so stunned I did not even notice Harper until she leaned against the bookshelf next to our table. Harper Davis was my best friend, a fiercely sharp alpha who possessed zero filter and a terrifying ability to read people. She crossed her arms, her dark eyes flicking from my rigid posture to Hunter's sleeping form, and finally to the tea. A slow, wicked smirk spread across her face. "Do not," I whispered frantically. I did not say a word. She whispered back, leaning down. She took a delicate sniff of the air and rolled her eyes. Oh my God, he is literally purring. He is not. Jewel, the guy's pre-rut is leaking all over the room, and he is sleeping like a baby because you smell like a walking vanilla candle, she muttered, highly amused. You look like a hostage. Relax. He is not going to eat you. At least not the way you think. She winked, tapped the table, and sauntered away before I could throw my textbook at her head. I looked back at Hunter. Without the scowl, he did not look like a monster. He just looked like a teenager carrying too much weight on his shoulders. The dark circles under his eyes were prominent. I hesitated for a long time. Then, very carefully, I reached out and pulled the chamomile tea toward me. It was still warm. That night, the rain returned, drumming a steady rhythm against my bedroom window. I sat cross-legged on my bed, the glowing screen of my laptop illuminating the dark room. I opened the admin panel for the listener. There was a new message from HC. I took a deep breath and clicked it open. Listener, I went back to the library. I know you said I was being a territorial jerk, and maybe I was, but I went back. And he did not run away. He just sat there reading his history book, smelling like vanilla and quiet. I do not know what is wrong with me. The pre-rut headaches have been blinding. The pressure from the team, from my dad, it feels like I am constantly suffocating. But today, in that dusty corner, I fell asleep. For the first time in weeks, the noise in my head stopped, just because he was there. He drank the tea I brought him. He still looks at me like I am a serial killer, but he drank it. How do I get him to stop looking at me like that? How do I talk to him without ruining the only good thing I have left? HC. I read the words 3 times. The image of his broad shoulders slumped in exhaustion flashed in my mind. I knew I was playing a dangerous game. I was a solitary Omega holding the biggest, darkest secret of the most powerful Alpha in school. If he ever found out I was the listener, he would probably destroy me. But as I stared at the blinking cursor, the lingering fear in my chest was entirely gone. It was replaced by a soft, strange ache. My fingers found the keys. Dear HC, you cannot expect someone to stop fearing the storm just because it is quiet for one afternoon. If you want him to stop looking at you like a monster, stop acting like you have to be one. You bought him tea. That is a start. Next time, try something really radical. Try saying hello. The listener. I hit send, closed my laptop, and listened to the rain. For the first time since Hunter Crawford invaded my corner, I found myself looking forward to tomorrow. November in Washington did not just arrive, it settled over Westridge Academy like a damp, heavy blanket. The days grew shorter, the sky a permanent bruised gray. In the third-floor archives, the nature of our silent war had fundamentally changed. It was no longer a battle of endurance. It had become a routine. A bizarre, unspoken arrangement where the apex predator of the school and the invisible Omega shared an oak table every single afternoon. I stopped bracing myself for an attack. Hunter stopped glaring at me as if I were a puzzle he wanted to smash. Instead, a strange, suffocating comfort crept into the space between us. The silence finally broke on a Thursday. The wind was howling against the stained glass, rattling the ancient panes. I was typing furiously on my laptop, trying to finish an essay for AP Government, when a heavy, leather-bound book slid across the table, stopping just shy of my keyboard. I blinked, looking down. It was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I looked up. Hunter was staring at his hands, which were resting flat on the scarred wood. His jaw was tense. The air around him smelled of rain-soaked cedar, thick, but entirely devoid of aggression. "I do not understand it," he said. His voice was a low, gravelly rumble that I felt in the soles of my shoes. It was the first time he had spoken directly to me in 3 weeks. I swallowed, trying to find my voice. "You do not understand the book." He finally looked at me. His whiskey-colored eyes were tired, carrying a weight that made my chest tighten. "Gable wants a 10-page analysis on the duality of the monster. I read the whole damn thing twice. He is just angry because he is ugly and alone. What is there to analyze?" I stared at him. The terrifying Hunter Crawford was asking me for homework help. It was so absurd I almost laughed, but looking at the dark circles under his eyes, I did not. "He is not just angry," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "He is terrified. He did not ask to be made. He was thrown into a world that hated him on sight because of what he was not who he was. The real tragedy is not that he becomes a monster. It is that he was denied the chance to be anything else." Hunter went completely still. He stared at me with an intensity that stripped the air from my lungs. The faint scent of ozone crackled in the air, a physical reaction to whatever was going on inside his head. Slowly, he pulled the book back toward him. "Denied the chance," he murmured, his eyes dropping to the cover. Right. He did not ask for anything else. He just opened his notebook and started writing. But for the rest of the hour, every time I shifted in my chair, I noticed something I had not seen before. If I moved too fast, Hunter would subtly lean back. If my knee accidentally bumped the table leg, he would retract his long legs, pulling them securely under his own chair. The terrifying, ruthless Alpha was meticulously, desperately trying not to crowd my space. That night, the reason behind his carefulness became devastatingly clear. I was curled up under my duvet, the blue light of my laptop illuminating my face. The listener inbox had a new message. Listener, my father pulled me into his office today. He told me that a Crawford does not ask, he takes. He said an alpha's only real currency in this world is fear, and if they are not afraid of you, you have already lost. I hate it. I hate the way this blood in my veins makes me feel. Sometimes the pre-rut anger is so loud I cannot think. Everyone looks at me and sees a weapon, but when I look at him, the boy in the library, the last thing in the world I want is his fear. Today, I accidentally dropped a book too hard on the table and he flinched. It made me feel sick to my stomach. What if my father is right? What if I cannot control the biology? What if I end up being the monster he already thinks I am? I read the email until the words blurred. My heart ached a physical throbbing pain in the center of my chest. Hunter Crawford was not a monster. He was a teenager trapped inside a legacy of brutality, terrified of his own shadow, terrified of hurting me. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Dear HC, you are not your father. Biology is just a starting line, not a life sentence. The true test of power is not how much you can destroy, but how gently you can hold something fragile. A monster does not lie awake at night worrying about being a monster. Keep holding back the storm. He notices. The listener. I sent it close the laptop and stared at the ceiling for a long time. The next afternoon, the inevitable happened. I was exhausted running on 3 hours of sleep. I was packing up my bag when my elbow caught the edge of my history notebook. It slipped off the table, fluttering toward the floor. I lunged forward to grab it. Hunter lunged at the exact same time. Our hands collided in midair. It was the first time we had ever physically touched. His fingers were scorching hot against my knuckles. A jolt of pure, unadulterated electricity shot up my arm. My omega instincts violently flared a tidal wave of submission and biological desire so strong my breath hitched audibly. Vanilla. The sweet, heavy scent of vanilla flooded the space between us as my blockers temporarily failed under the adrenaline spike. We both froze, suspended half out of our chairs, our faces mere inches apart. Up close, his eyes were not just brown, they were flecked with gold. His chest was heaving. He was breathing me in, his pupils blown wide, the scent of cedar and lightning swirling around us in a dizzying storm. He looked starved. He looked completely, utterly captivated. I was trapped in his gaze, unable to move, unable to breathe. Slowly, agonizingly, Hunter withdrew his hand. He picked up the notebook, his knuckles white, and held it out to me. As I took it, his fingers brushed against mine one last time. He leaned in his lips, hovering dangerously close to my ear, his breath hot against my neck. The true test of power, Hunter whispered, his voice, a ragged, desperate rasp, is not how much you can destroy. My heart stopped dead in my chest. He pulled back his eyes, dark and unreadable, grabbed his backpack, and walked out of the library, leaving me trembling in the silence. He had memorized it. The line between the terrifying alpha and the broken boy on my screen had just completely, irrevocably shattered. The storm hit Westridge Academy at exactly 4:15 p.m. It did not roll in gently. It slammed against the Gothic architecture with a violent, howling fury. The sky outside the stained glass windows turned the color of bruised iron, plunging the third-floor archives into premature twilight. I was staring at the line of text on my laptop, but I had not read a single word in 20 minutes. Every nerve ending in my body was hyper-focused on the boy sitting across from me. Hunter had not spoken since he whispered my own words back to me the day before, but the air between us had fundamentally shifted. It was no longer a silent war of intimidation. It was a heavy, intoxicating orbit. Every breath he took seemed to sync with my own. The scent of rain-soaked cedar and crackling ozone was a permanent fixture in my lungs. Then lightning tore across the sky, blindingly white. A split second later, thunder shook the floorboard so violently my laptop rattled on the oak table. And then the lights died. The library was instantly swallowed by absolute suffocating darkness. The sudden silence from the HVAC system cutting out was deafening, but what made my blood run cold was the distinct mechanical clack echoing from the main entrance downstairs, the electronic security doors. When the power grid failed, they automatically went into lockdown. We were trapped. Panic, sharp and icy, spiked in my chest. I scrambled out of my chair, my knees hitting the edge of the heavy table. "Hey!" I said, my voice sounding far too loud in the pitch black. "Hunter, do not move." His voice came from the darkness directly in front of me. It was not the low rumbling voice of the boy who had asked me for homework help. It was a guttural, strained rasp. It sounded like an animal choking on a chain. I froze. What is wrong? We just need to call security. Julian, step back. The command physically pushed me backward. In the dark, his scent slammed into me. The ozone was not just crackling anymore, it was exploding. It smelled like a live electrical wire snapping and thrashing in a puddle of water. It was the terrifying, overwhelming pheromone spike of an alpha in the absolute peak of a pre-rut completely stripped of control. My body reacted before my brain could process the danger. The primal terror and the claustrophobia of the dark triggered a massive adrenaline spike. Beneath my thick sweater, the medical-grade scent patch on my scent gland suddenly burned. It could not hold. The biological imperative of a cornered omega overrode the synthetic chemicals in seconds. The patch failed. A wave of pure, concentrated vanilla flooded the cramped archives, thick, sweet, and disastrously alluring. In the pitch black, I heard Hunter drag in a ragged, starving breath. A low, vibrating growl tore through his chest, a sound that made my knees instantly weak. I'm sorry, I gasped, backing away, until my spine hit the cold metal of a bookshelf. My hands were trembling violently. I cannot my blockers. Stop talking, Hunter choked out. I heard him stumbling, moving away from me, his heavy boots scraping erratically against the floorboards. Do not move. Do not speak. Do not God, do not smell like that. He was fighting it. He was fighting the biology that told him to claim the Omega trapped in his territory. Hunter, I whispered, terrified he was going to tear himself apart. A loud smashing sound echoed as bone met solid oak. The whole bookshelf vibrated behind me. He had punched the wooden pillar. Another heavy smash resonated as he hit it again. Harder. A desperate, violent attempt to use physical pain to ground his spiraling alpha instincts. Stay away from me. Hunter breathed, his voice breaking. Over the overwhelming scent of cedar lightning and vanilla, a new smell hit my senses. Copper. The sharp, unmistakable tang of blood. He was destroying his hands just to keep from touching me. My heart shattered in the dark. The true test of power is not how much you can destroy, but how gently you can hold something fragile. He was proving it. Right here, he was hurting himself to keep me safe. I fumbled in my pocket with shaking fingers, pulling out my phone. I hit the side button. The harsh beam of the flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the dusty aisle. Hunter was slumped against the opposite shelf 10 feet away. His massive frame was curled inward, his head thrown back against the wood eyes tightly shut. His chest heaved with every ragged breath. His right hand was dripping blood onto the floorboards, but it was not the blood that made my breath stop. When Hunter had stumbled backward, he had knocked his massive backpack off the table. It lay spilled on the floor, its contents scattered across the rug. Right in the center of the beam of my flashlight lay a thick, leather-bound sketchbook splayed open face down. As I stared frozen, my phone trembling in my hand, a draft of wind from the storm outside fluttered the pages. The book flipped over. My flashlight illuminated a charcoal drawing. It was a sketch of a boy sleeping on a backpack, his face half hidden by a thick sweater. The shading was meticulous, capturing the soft curve of the boy's cheek and the messy spray of his hair. In the bottom right corner, there was a date, November 12th. It was me. But that was not the problem. The problem was that I had seen this exact drawing before. I had seen it as a scanned attachment in an email sent to the listener inbox 4 days ago. He looks so peaceful when he sleeps. I wish I did not ruin it just by being in the room. The world tilted on its axis. The air left my lungs in a violent rush. Hunter Crawford was HC. I knew that, but standing here looking at the physical proof spilling out of his bag, the horrifying reality of what I had done finally crashed down on me. I was not just a boy sitting at a table. I was the listener. I was the anonymous voice he had poured his deepest, darkest fears out to. He thought I was a safe haven. He trusted the listener, and every day I sat across from him, knowing his darkest secrets, judging him, pitying him, and lying to his face. I was a fraud. Hunter peeled his eyes open, squinting against the harsh light. His gaze tracked from my pale, horrified face down to the sketchbook on the floor. His golden-flecked eyes widened. The blood drained from his face. "Julian," he whispered, his voice cracking with a sudden devastating vulnerability. He took a half step forward, his bloody hand reaching out. At that exact moment, the screech of metal on metal echoed from the stairwell. "Hello, anyone up here." A flashlight beam swept across the ceiling. The janitorial staff had manually pried the security doors open. The spell shattered. I did not think. I could not breathe. The guilt and the terror of being exposed of him looking at me and seeing not a fragile Omega, but a liar who had manipulated his secrets consumed me entirely. I dropped the beam of my light, grabbed my backpack from the table, and ran. I sprinted past him, avoiding his outstretched hand by inches, the smell of vanilla and his blood swirling in my wake. I bolted down the stairs, past the bewildered janitor, and burst through the heavy front doors into the freezing pouring rain. I left the apex predator of Westridge Academy standing in the dark, bleeding, staring at the empty space where I had just been. I did not go to school the next day, or the day after that. I told my mother I had a fever. It was not a complete lie. My body was burning, shivering under 2 layers of blankets, but it was not a virus. It was the biological crash of a blown scent patch mixed with the crushing, suffocating weight of guilt. For 5 days, I hid in my bedroom. I kept the blinds drawn, turning the space into a dim, quiet tomb. The lingering smell of my own panicked vanilla was stuck in the fabric of my sheets. Every time I closed my eyes, I did not see the safety of my room. I saw Hunter. I saw him slumped against the bookshelf, his massive frame trembling, destroying his own hands just to keep the monster inside him at bay. I saw the vulnerability in his golden-flecked eyes when he whispered my name. And then I saw myself dropping the flashlight and running like a coward. By Wednesday night, the silence in my room became too loud to bear. My hands were shaking as I pulled my laptop from the bedside table. I flipped the screen open. The harsh blue light made my eyes water. I logged into the admin panel of the listener. My breath caught in my throat. There were 17 new messages, all of them from HC. I opened the first one, sent at 3 a.m. on Monday, just hours after the storm. Listener, I ruined it. I terrified him. The power went out, and the air got so thick, and I lost control. I could not stop the biology. He was so scared, listener. He was shaking in the dark. I hit the wall. I just needed the pain to clear my head, so I would not touch him. The second email was sent 4 hours later. He ran away from me. I reached out, and he looked at me like I was exactly what my father said I was. A weapon. A monster. I cannot get the smell of his fear out of my head. I discussed myself. By Wednesday afternoon, the emails were not just letters anymore. They were fragmented, desperate pleas from a boy who was tearing himself apart from the inside out. He has not been at school. The table is empty. His scent is completely gone from the archives. I drove him away. I ruined the only good thing I had. Tell me how to fix this. Please, just tell me how to make him stop hating me. A hot tear spilled over my lashes, tracing a wet path down my cheek and dripping onto my keyboard. Then another, and another. I pulled my knees to my chest, burying my face in my arms, and finally broke down. I sobbed until my chest ached. I had not run because I was afraid of Hunter Crawford. That was the lie I had been telling myself for 5 days to make the cowardly exit sting less. The truth was far more devastating. I ran because of the sketchbook. I ran because standing there in the dark, looking at the meticulous charcoal drawing of my own face, I realized he had given me his whole heart completely unprotected. He thought he was the monster, but I was the one who had manipulated his secrets. I was the fraud hiding behind a screen. Downstairs, the front door slammed open. Julian Hayes, if you are dead in there, I am killing you again. Footsteps stomped heavily up the stairs. My bedroom door swung open, hitting the wall with a sharp cracking sound. Harper stood in the doorway. She was wearing her cheer uniform, her arms crossed her dark eyes, flashing with a mix of fierce alpha irritation and genuine worry. She took one step into the room, sniffed the air, and wrinkled her nose. It smells like a funeral parlor. And depressed vanilla in here, she announced, marching over to my window. She grabbed the cord and yanked the blinds up. The gray Washington afternoon light flooded the room. Get out of bed. Go away, Harper, I croaked, wiping my face with the sleeve of my sweater. No. She sat down on the edge of my mattress, the springs groaning. Her sharp gaze dropped to the glowing screen of my laptop, then back to my red, swollen eyes. The whole school is walking on eggshells, Jules. Crawford is a walking disaster. He yelled at the defensive line for 5 straight minutes today because someone dropped a water bottle. He looks like he has not slept in a year. I flinched, looking away. I cannot face him. Why? Because he scented you in the dark. Harper rolled her eyes, her tone brutally casual. Please. I told you weeks ago he was obsessed with you. Because I am the listener, I whispered. The words hung in the air. I waited for her to gasp. I waited for her to look at me with the same horror I felt for myself. Instead, Harper just sighed a long, exasperated sound. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. I snapped my head up, staring at her. What you knew? I am not an idiot, Julian. I see you typing on that blog every day, and I saw the way he looked at you in the library. It was not hard to connect the dots. She leaned forward, flicking my forehead hard enough to make me wince. You are both idiots. He thinks he is a beast who scared you away. You think you are a villain for giving him good advice. It is pathetic. I lied to him, Harper. I sat across from him every day and judged him. Did you? Harper's voice softened just a fraction, or did you just finally see him for who he actually is? I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat thick and heavy. You like him, Harper stated. It was not a question. And he is literally going insane without you. So, are you going to lay here and let that stupid giant alpha destroy himself? Or are you going to put your big boy sweater on and go fix this? She did not wait for an answer. She stood up, patted my leg, and walked to the door. Be at school tomorrow, Jules. I am tired of eating lunch alone. The door clicked shut. I sat in the quiet room for a long time. The gray light from the window shifted into the deeper blue of evening. My eyes fell back to the laptop screen, to the 17 unanswered cries for help. Tell me how to fix this. My hands stopped shaking. I reached out and pulled the laptop onto my lap. I did not type a long philosophical paragraph. I did not hide behind the wise anonymous persona anymore. I just typed the only thing that mattered. Dear HC, stop hiding. 3 p.m. tomorrow, the oak table in the archives. Bring the sketchbook. Let him see who you really are. The listener. I hit send. I closed the laptop. I took a deep breath, the scent of stale vanilla fading, replaced by a sudden terrifying surge of courage. Tomorrow, the silent war was finally going to end. The halls of Westridge Academy felt completely different when you were not trying to be invisible. Walking to the third-floor archives on Thursday afternoon, I did not keep my head down. I did not hug the walls. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, but my steps were steady. I had taken off the heavy sweater. I wore a simple soft cotton shirt, and for the first time since I enrolled at this school, I had not applied a fresh scent patch. I let the faint, natural sweetness of vanilla rise to my skin unashamed and unhidden. I reached the archives at exactly 2:50 p.m. The storm from the weekend had passed, leaving behind a crisp, painfully bright autumn sky. Sunlight poured through the stained glass windows, painting the oak table in warm hues of gold and crimson. I sat down in my usual chair, I opened my laptop, and I waited. The hands of the antique clock on the wall ticked with agonizing slowness. Every minute felt like an hour. What if he did not read the message? What if he was too angry, too hurt, or too broken to show up? At exactly 3 p.m., the heavy wooden doors groaned open. My breath stopped dead in my throat. Hunter stepped into the library. He was not wearing his Westridge football jacket. He wore a faded gray hoodie, his hands shoved deep into the pockets, his broad shoulders slumped. He looked completely wrecked. The dark circles under his eyes were bruised and heavy, and his jaw was covered in a rough shadow of stubble. But it was his scent that broke my heart. There was no crackling ozone, no aggressive lightning. He just smelled like damp cedar wood after a long, devastating storm, heavy-grounded and infinitely sad. He stopped at the edge of the aisle, his golden-flecked eyes locked onto me. For a second, he looked like he was bracing himself for me to run again. I did not move. I just looked back at him, keeping my breathing even. Slowly, carefully, as if approaching a wild animal that might bolt, Hunter walked toward the table. But instead of pulling out the chair across from me, the chair that had defined our silent war for weeks, he bypassed it. He walked around the heavy oak wood, pulled out the chair directly to my left, and sat down. He was beside me. Our knees were inches apart. The proximity sent a jolt of pure, terrifying electricity straight down my spine. Hunter did not look at me. He kept his gaze fixed firmly on the scarred wood of the table. He pulled one hand out of his pocket. His knuckles were bruised, wrapped in stark white medical tape, the physical evidence of his desperate attempt to protect me in the dark. With his good hand, he reached into his backpack and pulled out the thick, leather-bound sketchbook. He placed it softly on the table between us. "I am sorry," he said. His voice was a gravelly, broken whisper. It did not belong to the apex predator of Westridge. It belonged to a boy who had lost everything. "I did not mean to trap you," Hunter continued, his hands gripping the edge of his chair so tightly, his knuckles turned white. "When the power went out, I felt the biology was so loud. But I swear to God, Julian, I would have torn my own arms off before I let myself hurt you." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I know. I wrote to someone, Hunter said, his voice cracking completely, ignoring my response, lost in his own confession. An anonymous advice blog. I told them how terrified I was of the blood in my veins. They told me I was not a monster. They told me to stop acting like one. But they were wrong. I terrified you. You looked at me like I was exactly what my father raised me to be. He finally turned his head. His eyes met mine, raw, completely unprotected, and devastatingly vulnerable. I am HC, he whispered like the words physically pained him. I am the monster. The silence in the library was absolute. I looked at his bruised hands. I looked at the dark circles under his eyes. I looked at the boy who had built a fortress of intimidation just to hide a heart that was entirely too soft for the world he lived in. I did not feel fear. The lingering anxiety evaporated, replaced by a massive, overwhelming wave of pure affection. A small, breathless laugh escaped my lips. Hunter flinched his brows, drawing together in confusion. Julian. I did not say a word. I reached out and touched the lid of my laptop. I pulled it open. The screen flared to life, bright against the afternoon shadows. I clicked on the open browser tab, then slowly rotated the laptop, pushing it across the table until the screen was facing him directly. Hunter blinked, leaning forward slightly to read the glowing text. It was the admin panel of the listener. Right in the center of the screen, under the heading Sent Messages, was the email from yesterday. Dear HC, stop hiding. 3 p.m. tomorrow. The oak table in the archives. Bring the sketchbook. Let him see who you really are. The listener. Hunter stopped breathing. He stared at the screen. Then he stared at the keyboard. Then his eyes, wide and completely stunned, snapped up to my face. His brain visibly short-circuited. I watched the alpha process the information in real time. He looked back at the screen, back at me. The pieces fell into place with a terrifying, silent clarity. You. Hunter rasped, his voice entirely devoid of breath. You are the listener. I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek to keep my lips from trembling. You read my emails. All 17 of them, I confirmed softly. You. A hot, dark flush crept up Hunter's neck. The scent of ozone suddenly spiked, no longer sad, but crackling with wild, disoriented energy. You told me I was a territorial jerk. You were glaring at me for an hour a day. I shot back, defending myself. I was glaring at you because I could not stop looking at you. Hunter practically shouted, the volume of his voice echoing off the dusty bookshelves. He ran his taped hand aggressively through his dark hair, looking completely unhinged. You sat there every single day, knowing it was me. You watched me bring you tea, and then you went home and gave me advice on how to talk to you. I was scared. I admitted my own voice rising. You are huge and you smell like a thunderstorm, and I was terrified. And then you ran away from me in the dark. Because you dropped a drawing of my face, I yelled back, gesturing wildly to the sketchbook. I realized you actually liked me, and I felt like a fraud for lying to you. We were both breathing hard, staring at each other across the minimal space between our chairs. The air was thick, suffocatingly charged with a chaotic mix of frantic vanilla and exploding cedar. Hunter stared at me for a long, agonizing second. Then he let out a sound that was half growl, half exasperated sigh. You absolute menace, he muttered. Before I could process the words, his hand shot out. He did not grab my wrist. He did not hesitate. His large, warm palm cupped the back of my neck, his long fingers tangling instantly in the hair at the nape of my neck. He pulled me in. I collided with his chest, my hands instinctively flying up to grip the fabric of his hoodie. He leaned his forehead heavily against mine, his chest heaving, his breath hot against my lips. I thought I lost you, he whispered fiercely, his voice vibrating against my skin. You did not? I breathed back, my fingers curling tightly into his shirt. I am right here. Hunter closed his eyes, his thumb tracing a desperate, soothing circle against my pulse point. The war was over. The walls were gone. And, for the first time in my life, I did not want to hide anymore. Winter did not just arrive at Westridge Academy, it consumed the campus. By mid-January, the damp, gray autumn rain had frozen into a blanket of brilliant, blinding white snow. The Gothic architecture of the school looked like a fortress trapped in ice, but inside the third-floor archives, it was entirely perfectly warm. The heavy oak table in the darkest corner was no longer a battlefield. It was not a place of silent wars, terrifying standoffs, or suffocating anxiety. It was a territory, our territory. I was sitting in my usual chair, typing an essay for AP European History. The stained glass windows painted the pages of my textbook in muted shades of blue and violet. I was not wearing a thick, oversized sweater. I wore a fitted, soft gray Henley, and for the third month in a row, my neck was entirely bare. I had thrown my medical-grade scent patches into the trash on a Tuesday in November, and I had not bought a single box since. My natural scent filled the small aisle, unapologetic sweet vanilla. But it did not smell like panic anymore. It was completely irrevocably tangled with the deep, grounding scent of rain-soaked cedar and a faint, warm crackle of ozone, the storm and the calm existing in perfect biological harmony. Hunter did not sit across from me. That chair had been permanently abandoned. He sat directly beside me, his long legs stretched out under the table, his massive frame slouching lazily. His head was resting entirely on my right shoulder. He was fast asleep, his chest rising and falling in a slow, rhythmic tempo. His dark hair tickled my jaw every time he exhaled. He was wearing his Westridge football jacket, but I was wearing his faded gray hoodie, the one he had worn on the day the walls finally came down. I paused my typing, shifting my weight slightly. Hunter let out a low, rumbling groan in his sleep. His heavy arm, which was draped casually across my lap, tightened its grip. He pulled my waist flush against his hip blindly, burying his face deeper into the crook of my neck, right over my scent gland. He inhaled deeply, letting out a soft, contented sigh, and went perfectly still again. I could not help the small smile that tugged at the corner of my mouth. The apex predator of Westridge Academy, the ruthless, terrifying alpha. He was nothing but an oversized, clingy menace who used me as a human pillow at least 3 days a week. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell. I looked up. 2 massive linebackers from the varsity football team stopped at the edge of our aisle. They were looking for their captain. When they saw Hunter curled around a notoriously quiet Omega practically purring in his sleep, their jaws simultaneously dropped. They froze their eyes wide with absolute comical disbelief. A few months ago, this exact scenario would have sent me into a full-blown panic attack. I would have shoved Hunter away. I would have grabbed my bag and run for the hills. Today, I did not flinch. I did not shrink. I just met their stares, raised a single challenging eyebrow, and placed my left hand gently into Hunter's dark hair. The 2 linebackers blinked, panicked violently, shook their heads, and practically sprinted back down the stairs in terror. "You are evil," a voice drawled from the adjacent aisle. Harper strolled into the archives, holding 2 paper cups. She set a hot chamomile tea next to my laptop and a black coffee near Hunter's head. She pulled out the chair across the table, which was the empty one, and sat down, crossing her arms. "I am just establishing boundaries," I whispered back, taking a sip of the tea. "You are terrifying," his teammates, Harper corrected, smirking. "They think you have cast a dark spell on him. He has not yelled at the defensive line in 2 months. He actually smiled at a freshman yesterday. It is unnatural." "He is happy," I said simply. "He is domesticated," Harper countered, though her dark eyes were soft with genuine affection. She tapped the table. "I will leave you two to your disgusting display of domestic bliss. Do not let him drool on your textbook." She winked and walked away, the sound of her boots fading into the library's quiet hum. I turned my attention back to my laptop. I minimized my essay document and opened a familiar browser tab. The admin panel for the listener. I still ran the blog. Westridge students still had secrets, and they still needed someone to listen. But the tone of the advice had changed. It was not written by a ghost hiding in the shadows anymore. It was written by someone who had learned how to stand in the light, and occasionally I let someone else use the platform. Right at the top of the homepage was a new post published that morning. The author was not the listener. It was tagged guest contributor HC, to the sophomore who asked how to talk to the pretty Omega in his AP biology class. "Stop overthinking. Stop trying to act like a tough guy. Alphas are stupid, and we ruin things when we try to be intimidating. Just buy him chamomile tea. Tell him he looks nice. Let him see that you are nervous. Trust me on this. I'm currently dating the smartest, bravest, most stubborn Omega in this entire school. I thought I was a monster, but he proved me wrong. All it took was a cup of tea, a ruined sketchbook, and a lot of groveling." HC? A soft breath of laughter escaped my lips. I reached out and gently traced the glowing text on the screen. "What is funny?" Hunter's gravelly, sleep-rough voice vibrated against my collarbone. He did not lift his head. He just opened one whiskey-colored eye, looking up at me through his dark lashes. "Nothing," I murmured, my fingers continuing to thread absent-mindedly through his hair. "Just reading an article by a very arrogant guest writer." Hunter practically growled, a low, vibrating sound of pure satisfaction. He finally lifted his head, stretching his broad shoulders. He looked at the laptop screen, then looked at me. The golden flecks in his eyes caught the dim light of the library. There was no fear in his gaze anymore, no exhaustion, no desperate battle to hold back the storm inside him. His father was wrong, and Alpha's greatest currency in this world was not fear. It was trust. And Hunter had mine completely and unconditionally. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone and a pair of wired earbuds. He plugged them in, placed one earbud into his right ear, and gently, carefully tucked the other one into my left ear. A soft acoustic indie song filled the silence between us. Hunter closed his laptop and pushed it aside. He did not say a word. He just reached under the heavy oak table and found my hand. His large, calloused fingers intertwined perfectly with mine. His grip was firm, grounding, and infinitely warm. He leaned his head back against the chair, turning his gaze toward the stained glass window. Outside, the snow was falling steadily, blanketing the world in quiet peace. I leaned my head against his shoulder, letting the music and the scent of cedar wash over me. I spent my entire life learning how to be invisible. I thought survival meant taking up as little space as possible. I thought safety was a dark corner and a medical scent patch. But as I sat there, my hand wrapped tightly in the hand of the boy who had once terrified me, I realized the war was truly over. I did not want to be a ghost anymore. I was seen. I was safe. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged.